She said no to Elvis Presley, not to recording her song, to the deal his manager demanded, half the publishing rights, just for the king to sing it. She turned it down. On a song she'd already written for a man she deeply admired, at a point in her career when saying no to Elvis Presley seemed like career suicide. Years later, that same song made her one of the wealthiest songwriters in music history, because she kept the rights. Today, we're looking at Dolly Parton. Not just the rhinestones and the wigs, but the sharp, deliberate businesswoman underneath all of it. 4 lessons from a woman who built an empire by knowing exactly who she was. Dolly Parton was born in 1946 in a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, the 4th of 12 children. Her family had almost nothing. She's talked openly about wearing a coat her mother sewed from scraps of fabric. Patches from a dozen different sources, stitched together out of necessity, not fashion. That coat later became one of her most famous songs. The day after she graduated high school, she got on a bus to Nashville with a suitcase and a guitar. She had no connections, no money, and no backup plan. What she did have was an unusually clear sense of who she wanted to become, and a willingness to build that image deliberately, rather than waiting for someone else to hand her one. She said many times that her flashy, exaggerated look, the big hair, the rhinestones, the curves, wasn't an accident or a record label's idea. It was her own creation, modelled after a local woman from her childhood that she thought was the most glamorous person she'd ever seen. Decades before personal branding was a phrase anyone used, Dolly Parton had already built one, entirely on her own terms. Here's the first thing Dolly's life teaches us. Find out who you are and do it on purpose. Dolly Parton. Most people either hide who they are to fit in, or they let the world define them by accident. Dolly did neither. She took a very specific, very deliberate image, bold, glamorous, over the top, and built it herself, on purpose, long before anyone told her it was a good idea. That took real nerve in the country music world of the 1960s and 70s, an industry that often expected women to be modest and understated. Dolly went the opposite direction, loudly and unapologetically. The lesson isn't necessarily about rhinestones, it's about intention. Most of us drift into a version of ourselves shaped by other people's expectations. Dolly's approach was to decide who she wanted to be, and then build that person on purpose, in public, regardless of what anyone thought. Who are you drifting into by accident that you could instead be building on purpose? For decades, Dolly Parton was an easy target. The big hair, the exaggerated figure, the thick Appalachian accent, plenty of people were ready to write her off as a dumb, blonde novelty act. She got ahead of every single one of them. It costs a lot of money to look this cheap. Dolly Parton. That line does something very clever. It takes the exact criticism people were ready to throw at her and says it first with a wink, before anyone else can land the punch. Once she owned the joke, it stopped being a weapon anyone else could use against her. She turned mockery into material, and material into decades of goodwill from an audience that came to see her as one of the sharpest, most self-aware people in the entire industry. Most of us spend energy trying to hide the things we think people might mock us for. Dolly's approach was the opposite. Name it yourself, first with humour and there's nothing left for anyone else to use. In 1995, Dolly Parton started a program called the Imagination Library, mailing free books to children in her home county every month, starting from birth. That program has since expanded across the United States and into several other countries, and has mailed well over 100 million free books to children, entirely funded through Dolly's foundation and partners. In 2020, during the early uncertain days of the pandemic, it came out that Dolly had quietly donated $1 million to Vanderbilt University for coronavirus research, funding that contributed to the early development of one of the vaccines that would later reach the public. She didn't hold a press conference about it. It came out almost by accident in an unrelated interview. Dolly's approach to giving is instructive precisely because of how quiet it usually is. She's not giving to be seen giving. She's giving because, in her own words, she simply believes in taking care of people. And she's built her entire public philosophy on the idea that helping others shouldn't require an audience. Let's go back to that Elvis Presley story from the beginning of this video because it's worth telling in full. Dolly had written a song called I Will Always Love You. Elvis Presley wanted to record it, which, for almost any songwriter at that point in history, would have been a career-defining honour. But Presley's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had a standard practice. Any songwriter who wanted Elvis to record their song had to give up half the publishing rights. Dolly said no. If you don't like the road you're walking, start paving another one. Dolly Parton. She kept full ownership of her own song. Years later, Whitney Houston recorded her own version of I Will Always Love You for the film The Bodyguard. It became one of the best-selling singles of all time. Because Dolly had kept full rights to her own work, that single decision, made under real pressure at real career risk, ended up making her one of the wealthiest songwriters in music history. The lesson isn't really about music royalties. It's about knowing the value of your own work well enough to protect it, even when giving it away feels like the easier, safer choice in the moment. Dolly Parton is still writing, still performing, and still giving away books and funding research well into her 70s. She built a persona so deliberate and so consistent that people sometimes forget there's a sharp, disciplined businesswoman running the whole operation underneath the wigs and the rhinestones. 4 lessons. Know exactly who you are and do it on purpose. Own the joke before anyone else can use it against you. Give without needing credit. And know the value of your own work well enough to protect it. None of that required being born into money or connections. It required knowing herself clearly enough to build the rest around that foundation. If this resonated with you, subscribe. We do this every week. I'll see you in the next one.